Welcome to Inner Peace with Dr. Reese, a program that can help you become liberated in the modern world. Now, here's your host, Dr. Kevin W. Reese.
So have you ever thought about turning your backyard into a farm to make a living? And have you ever thought about homesteading, especially due to the fact that the world is changing right now? Welcome to episode number 63. Today, I'm talking to the urban farmer, Curtis Stone. Through his book, his YouTube channel, and his membership programs, he teaches people how to take your property and turn it into a market farm so that you can make a living. In this conversation, we're going to talk about a lawn being just a cost center, how farming and gardening is meditative, growing fruit in colder climates with the use of a greenhouse, water collection, solar energy, capturing photosynthesis, not being able to rely on gas. And we're going to detail everything that he's doing to get himself ready for the big changes that are happening in the world right now. Curtis, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thanks for having me.
So, how many people have come to you looking for help with growing food since the pandemic?
Oh, geez. I don't even know. It's insane.
Yeah.
I've been telling them the same thing. I've been talking about this stuff forever. Not necessarily a pandemic, but some kind of event that's going to make it difficult to access food. And, you know, my YouTube audience or my memberships, you know, that's what I do and that's what I'm there for. But it's funny when people that I've known for so long are all of a sudden, hey, can I have your time now?
You know, there's almost two types of farming experiences. We have the market farm, and then you have the survival farm.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
And I saw a video where you revealed, I guess we can say, that you got together with 4 or 5 buddies and created a farm just for emergency, basically, which is completely different from your business, which is, you know, this is your livelihood, is growing food.
It's very different.
Yeah. I can tell you've been preparing.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I don't screw around. I've been preparing for this stuff for a long time though, because I've always known, like, that's what got me into farming back in 2008.
Yes.
Was you know, looking at the whole geopolitical situation of the world and going, okay, you know, it's not going to be gravy forever. There's going to be a reckoning coming at some point, whether it's debt, political, cultural. We're in all those now, I think. But yeah, that's what got me into it. So I've been preparing in many different ways. You know, my house is crash proof. It's off grid, or has the ability to be off grid if the grid goes down.
Grid tied.
Yeah, it's grid tied, but we have batteries and all that. And so and we're on 12 kilowatts of solar here. And then we grow a massive amount of our own food. As far as my little quarter acre that I live on, we grow, I would say, at least 90% of the fruit and vegetables that we eat in a year, including the winter. So, I mean, we've been, you know, and I've been skilling up. I've been learning how to do all this stuff along the way. So we've been, not that I've been looking forward to this time, but I've certainly been preparing for it as I've seen it coming for many years.
Dude, 2008 is really not that long ago. You've created an expertise pretty quickly. Back then, anyone that was on the tip was like 2012.
Yep,
2012.
exactly. That's right. That's what it was for me too.
And nothing happened, at least not physically.
That's right.
Happened.
Yeah.
And so I was doing my little prepping here and there. I was like, you know, dibble dabbling, but I never went all the way. It sounds like you went all the way.
I went all the way. I mean, as far as I could go with the resources and that I had available to me. We're definitely going further. We just purchased a large acreage way out of the city. So that's our next step is we got about 50 acres that we're going to be developing all the sort of the whole thing of human existence, food, water, shelter, energy. So we're going to be putting in some long-term perennial crops there, lots of tree crops, nuts and things like that, putting in water harvesting systems, putting in the off-grid energy systems, and then putting in a farm, really a small farm, but preparing a larger piece of land that if things go south in the city, that's where we can go. And we might just move out there. We'll see how we like it.
I was just going to say, you could start a community, a small one.
You could. And I don't want to, we certainly, that's kind of what we're doing as far as our closest friends and our family. That's what that's for. 'Cause I just, when I look at how things are going right now, I'm not optimistic about the masses. I think people like myself and maybe yourself and people that see what's going on, I think we'll be fine. But it's going to get tough in the cities and stuff. So I don't really want to be here for when that happens. I have young kids too. I don't want my kids being in there either. Even the whole mask thing, I'm just like, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of my kids not seeing people's faces. Like I don't want that to be their founding memories. And that's, it's so, my kids are before the age of 7, and that's where so much stuff is important and impressionable on their minds and their memories and their sort of foundational years. I don't want them growing up around social distancing and masks and nonsense.
You create your own bubble.
That's what we're going to do. Yeah.
It's working for the NBA.
It's working for the Amish. It's working for the Quakers and the Mennonites, right? So why not do the same?
The Amish is like the standard, man. They've been
unbelievable.
Mastered it.
Totally. When the lights go out, they're not even going to know.
No. No. So like many people, I've been wanting the garden for a long time. And when the pandemic happened, I said, now is the time. I started my little garden, little 104 square foot garden.
Yeah.
Just to, get my rookie season under my belt here. But never until I found your YouTube channel did I ever think, oh, turn my backyard into a farm and make a living. And so I appreciate this knowledge that you're passing on to people with your book, The Urban Farmer, and your YouTube channel. Me and many others with a quarter acre or less could actually turn this into a livelihood, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I did that for 10 years. And then I on the side of me farming, I was making YouTube videos and wrote a book. And so I built a whole career off my farm that's what I've fully transitioned to, starting 2 or 3 years ago. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. And going forward, that's probably going to be more necessary than ever. We're going to have to find ways to transact with each other and provide value to people in our communities with things that are done here, localized, because who knows what'll happen geopolitically with China, where so much stuff comes from, as well as agricultural products, things that the agricultural sector use, such as pharmaceuticals and fertilizers and pesticides for conventional agriculture. That a lot of that stuff comes from China. Yeah. So if we go into a sort of an American Cold War, it could make the necessity for local growing massive. And I mean, it's important now. And there's been for many years a really strong niche market where people can make a living growing on small acreage, like I did for 10 years. And our farm, the height of our farm, when I dialed everything in over the previous 8 years, the last 2 years of our production, we exceeded $100,000 of sales on a quarter acre. And that net was probably somewhere around 50. Like that's what I would take home as the proprietor of the business. But I had a full-time employee and another full-time guy in the summer. And, this is a good living, and those numbers in tough times would probably be even higher because the value of food goes up when times get tough. So, the career I built on farming was really based around niche market, high value crops to high value customers like restaurants and fancy catering organizations and things like that, where they're paying a premium for specialty product. often delicate product like salad greens and microgreens and cherry tomatoes and stuff like that. But in an environment where just bare necessity food is so valuable, we could see a 4 or 5 or 6, maybe even 10 times increase of the cost of the price of food. And so if that's the case, people growing a quarter acre of potatoes will be making a lot of money. Whereas I would have never told people 10 years ago that you could make money on a quarter acre of potatoes. To make the kind of money I did on a quarter acre, you got to do salad greens and microgreens and fancy, expensive crops. But in a market where everything's inflated, any kind of farming product is going to be valuable.
So 50 grand net, that's a decent living. And not only that, but you're doing it from your house. Obviously, you're not going into an office somewhere. You're saving gas money, sort of.
Oh, big time.
And you get to be home with the kids.
Well, that's it. And that's the thing that I've really tried to sell people on, with the idea of making a living from your farm at home is, yeah, the money's important. And in my book, I lay that out because I want people to understand the economics of it. And I want people to plan realistically and build a career for themselves. There you go.
Yeah.
And, but it is the lifestyle that is, in my opinion, the most superior, appeal to it, because work isn't so much work when it's integrated into your lifestyle flow. So if you have children and you've got a little homestead and you're working from home in the garden and the kids are with you and they're learning, so you're stacking functions, the kids are getting a real firsthand quality education about where their food comes from, and seeing their parents work has its own value and merits too when you're raising children. And there's so many things that you stack. So if you only measure the dollar value, say the net, like you said, was $50,000 on a quarter acre, but my kids are there with me and I don't have to go away from my family, it integrates into the lifestyle that has such a higher value than just the dollars and cents, that it really lends itself to a very rich and holistic lifestyle.
Sure. Even if you sort of broke even after expenses, and I mean all bills,
Yeah,
it's almost still worth it because you're home. you're free.
it is. And that's one thing that doesn't really get talked a lot about homesteading. And it's got to be the most, and this would be, I guess we would call this farmsteading. It's homesteading if you're growing food like we are. Farmsteading is where you're like homesteading, but you're also producing a commercial crop. The biggest value of whether it's homesteading or farmsteading is that all the work you do, especially in more of a homesteading context, you go and let's say you chop some firewood, or you harvest vegetables for dinner, and you go and pick some fruit. My daughter's in the greenhouse here picking figs right now. That work is entirely yours and yours alone. Nobody has, there's no slavery involved in that, right? Whereas I do believe that we live in a modern slavery system with income tax and the way the birth certificates work, and we're basically these commercialized, compartmentalized units of production for the system. But when you're living on the land and the work you do is yours and yours alone, you're that much less of a slave. There's layers of sovereignty that we can achieve through it, but it is a beautiful thing to just go out and say, chop firewood, and then that firewood heats your home. And better yet is you cut that firewood from the deadfall in the forest on your land, and then that heats your home. That work and that energy is yours and yours alone. Nobody has rights and can take that from you. It's quite liberating. It
seems so. I got about a quarter acre in the suburbs, and I'm sort of making steps. It's hard to do all at once. Mm-hmm. It's more than the average person's doing, that's for sure.
Oh, big time. But the thing is that right now, with all this stuff going on, Americans, North Americans, Westerners in general, need to recognize that there's so much ability to grow your own food right where you are. Like in my book, I cited some USDA statistics. Actually, they were just American and North American average statistics of the average size of a lot in North America.
Yeah.
And I believe in the book, it was the average home in North America has at least 2,000 square feet. It might even have been 4,000, but just say 2,000 square feet of lawn. And that's a lot of area. You know, if you, like, my lot is a quarter acre. My front yard, which is all garden, is 1,100 square feet. And then my backyard is about 3,000, which is all garden as well. You know, if the average person in North America has access to 2,000 to 4,000 square feet of growing area, we could literally grow all the fruits and vegetables we need right where we live.
That's right.
And so it's kind of cool, because if we go into sort of a Cold War type scenario, it's nice to know that America is very set up for that, because there's the history of the victory gardens.
Yeah.
You know, in World War II, they had all those propaganda posters about victory gardens and all that. So we can do that again. My one concern is that people are so disconnected these days. They're so connected to the online world, but they're so disconnected from their spiritual higher self, but also the land. And my concern is that in tough times, you know, when we have rioters and people like this smashing up cities, there's so many urbanites that don't know anything about growing food. That could be a little bit challenging, but we'll see. The land is there, the resources are there. You know, it's the will, and the people aren't necessarily there.
Very rarely does somebody wake up in the morning, look at their lawn, and say, "That right there is useless."
I know,
because the lawn is doing nothing unless you play on it a lot. But
yeah, exactly.
You're just mowing it.
Yeah.
Just for it to grow again.
It's a complete cost center. It's just, I think a lot of people are switching on to that. I don't know if it's a majority yet, or if we've hit some sort of cultural zeitgeist with that thing, but a lot of people are waking up to that. And the lawn is sort of a symbol, in my opinion, of the excess of the baby boomer generation.
Yeah.
Of how, like, there was so much stuff in abundance that they thought, I have land, why would I grow food? Because there's so much of it and it's so cheap everywhere else. Why would I spend any time doing that?
Right.
But that's changing now. People are, at least the consciousness is changing, that I see people are aware of it. You know, ever since I've been doing this, you know, commercially farming for 10 years, but I've also been growing, like my entire property is a garden. And even though I'm not commercially farming right now, every time people walk by, they go, that is so cool. What a smart thing to do with your land. And when I was farming, it was the same thing. I never had anybody on all the over 20 different plots that I farmed in my commercial multi-locational urban farm operation. Never did I have anybody walk by and go, oh, that's weird. Why would you do that? Everybody for the last 10 years has been, oh, that's so smart. It makes so much sense. They're completely converted over just by seeing it. No, I don't have to tell them anything. I don't have to talk about food security. I don't have to talk about anything. They just see it and they go, that makes sense. The
front lawn.
Yeah.
Do we have to get permission from the town to grow on the front lawn?
I never asked permission. I just did it. I'm just that kind of guy. I mean, I don't care because it's my property, and the common law is what's yours is yours. And there's no crime without a victim. And so I would encourage people. I don't want people to get in trouble, but at the same time,
apologize
I think
later.
People need to start standing up, though. Like it's the fact that that's a thing is ridiculous.
Would you put a fence around it in the front yard?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and that's exactly what I've done in my front yard. My front yard has a really nice, looks like, it's not wrought iron, it's steel, but looks like that.
Let's talk about crops. Yeah, you and I have similar climates. You're in Canada, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm in Hartford, which is about 2 hours north of New York.
Oh, okay.
You mentioned fruit. And so I'm a fruit guy. I love fruits to death, a lot more than vegetables. But I look outside and I'm like, well, I can't grow oranges. I can't grow mangoes.
Yeah.
What can I grow besides apples? We know apples and pears grow.
Yeah.
Besides apples and pears, what can I grow? I saw your greenhouse and I was very, I fell in love with that thing right away because I see you're growing figs and
Yeah, I got
grapes.
lemons and limes and
Oh,
figs and oranges.
now
Yeah,
are you able to grow the citrus because it's in the greenhouse?
yeah, because this greenhouse is heated in the winter. That's where I am right now as I record this.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can't do that stuff outside. You grow apples, cherries, nectarines, grapes,
Grapes.
raspberries, goji berries, blackberries. There's a lot of fruit you can grow. Just yeah, definitely
Grapes stand out. Something, just vine it.
super easy.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I love growing grapes. I wish I had more. But they get more and more abundant every year.
I'm
So
growing melons out here, and
yeah,
I didn't trellis them this year, so they're they're taking over the
they're
garden.
taking over. Yeah, that's okay. It's better to put them in an area where they don't smother everything out, or trellis them like I do. It works really well.
Yeah, what I was thinking of doing is getting the cattle panel and doing the tunnels,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and then just have the
yeah,
melons and squash go up.
totally. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing, and it's neat because then they hang through it, and it's super easy to harvest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna probably try that up at my new place because I've just got so much more land to play with up there. Um, yeah, I've been limited on what I've been able to do here because of my space, but it's been really neat actually over the last 10 years learning to farm commercially and homestead on a very small limited space that when I go out into 50 acres, I can try other things. So I'm kind of excited that it's kind of a new chapter. But there's so much value in the small scale too, because in permaculture they refer to it as the zones, and where you have your home, and then you'd have what is like considered a zone 1, which would be the closest things that you want to have, the closest food you want to have to you. So like your kitchen garden, your herbs, things like that, vegetables that you can plant in a tight space. And then a zone 2 would be things that you need a bit more space, fruit trees and grapevines and stuff like that. And then a zone 3 could be things like some grazing animals and stuff like that. So you kind of orientate your homestead around the proximity to where you are. And so there's so much value in learning the small scale. That's why my book is valuable to anybody, even who's homesteading, because understanding how things work in a small scale will solve the biggest problems for you at the homestead. Because you, in that zone 1 area, that's really where you're going to spend 90% of your time. So in that area, that's where you want it to be really efficient and seamless, and it works really well with your lifestyle, and it gives you most of what you need, and then you plan out from there.
What would you say, and you mentioned this earlier very briefly, but what would you say are the top 5 commercial crops and the top 5 survival crops? A little different.
Yeah, they'd be different. I mean, previously to this COVID stuff, I would say lettuce number 1, spinach number 2, microgreens number 3, radishes number 4, and turnips number 5.
Wow.
Those are the ones that for me were for the best money makers, as far as which is what delivered the biggest returns for us with the least amount of work.
Wow.
And then on survival crops, I would say
Potatoes, right?
potatoes for sure, squash, like winter squash, another, onions, like a red onion that keeps, tomatoes because you can preserve them.
No melons, huh?
Well, they're not really. I mean,
Not a big yield.
The yield's okay. It's just that I'm thinking of storage, right? And how you can. I mean, I'd probably put a fruit in there. I'd probably put raspberries in there because you can produce so much in a short period of time, and you can freeze and preserve them that it's nice to have some kind of sugar. So
what about cucumber pickling?
Yeah.
How come onions? Curious.
Because you need onions for cooking.
Right.
And they keep really well. Like my Red Wing onions, I can store for over a year. And so that has a lot of value. You can trade them with people. They could almost be a form of currency. So
onion is technically a medicinal plant as well because it's white.
It has it. Yeah.
Most whites are medicinal, like garlic.
Yeah, that's what they say. I don't know much about that, but I've heard that for sure.
How do you have the farm and be off grid? Can you solarize the whole thing? And what about water collection?
Our plan at the new acreage is it is off grid. There's no utilities out there. It's way out in the boonies, and so we have to produce all those things there. So we have water. There's a well on the property. The property's on a slope, and so what we're going to be doing is building some more water harvesting features into the landscape. One thing we're going to be doing is creating what are called swales. And that's where you have a hill like this, looking on it on the side, you basically carve a trench into the ground along the contour. So keeping at a level line, you're basically carving a ditch like this so the hill comes down, you dig out an area, and then you put that dirt on the underside. And then you do that all around for a long area. It could be a mile long. It just depends on your land. And as it rains or as snow melts, it comes down into that area, and water always settles there. And so what it does is it puts water into the land there, but it'll also fill up. And then once it gets past a certain point, you could have a dam on one end of it, and then you put what's called a level sill spillway at the end. And so as you get a lot of days of rain or whatever, that swale fills up. Once it gets past a certain height, you decide whatever that is, say 2 inches, then it starts to fill into a bigger catchwater dam. And then you're keeping water in the landscape that's irrigating trees and things that you plant along there, and it basically greens the area, because we're in a desert here, a high desert. It's very brown and dry, like Southern California, and so we need those kinds of things to,
Wow.
And this is kind of goes into a bigger conversation of capturing as much photosynthesis as possible.
Yeah.
In a scenario where you are limited in your energy and resources, you want to capture as much sunlight as humanly possible. In order to do that, you need to have lots of plants, because plants are the most efficient way to capture light. And so the more plants you have, the more water you have, the more energy you have, because you can burn and use plants to create energy in their own way as well, right? Growing trees, you can harvest those trees and burn them for firewood. And so capturing photosynthesis is like one of the most important things you can do on your land.
Wow. Yeah, I never thought of that. I appreciate that right there. How about catching water off the roof?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really easy way to do it, but that's only going to give you enough water to drink a little bit. If you want to capture water to irrigate larger parts of land, you need a far more significant capture.
How about filtering? You on your Berkey's game?
We got a Berkey. We have a Kangen here at home, and that's for the city tap water. But up there we'll have a Berkey. At this property, we've already got a fairly large concrete cistern that captures some of the water up on the hill. And so, we'll probably put that through the Berkey, but at the same time, natural water, man, there's something to it. It's you got a lot of minerals and stuff. So you got to test it, of course, to see what's there. But I'm really looking forward to just actually drinking real natural water.
Would you say solar is the bulk of the expenses when putting a homestead together?
Yeah. You mean solar energy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on where you are, but that's my plan. Like I'm budgeting about $100,000 to upgrade this property to get it to where I want, and 50 of that is going to be going to solar.
Wow. Yeah.
I haven't got the quote back yet, but what I'm looking to put in is about 20 kilowatts of solar, and then at least two. Well, I might not necessarily use Tesla batteries, but about 30 to 40 kilowatts of energy storage. So it's probably starting at $50,000. But from there, I mean, it's a lot. I mean, we've also got wind power up there too that we could utilize. Wind power is sweet too, because depending on where you are, sometimes you capture more wind at nighttime, and even in the colder seasons, like at this particular property, the majority of the wind blows at nighttime during the winter. Which is amazing because you're not getting any solar energy at that time. And so having a bit of both might be a good thing. We'll see. But the nice thing about this property is we're fairly high elevation, that we get a lot of sun, and it's above the cloud line. So we actually get sun year round.
I feel that solar is so important, and something that a lot of people don't think about is, well, gas is cool, but then what happens if gas prices inflate?
And they will.
What if it's $20 a gallon?
Yep.
How are we going to fill up our generators? How are we going to drive? How are
Absolutely.
you going to
That's
use a chainsaw?
Yeah, I'm there 100%. I mean, we're electrifying everything at our new property. Everything. We have a generator up there and we'll use it if we have to,
It's good
but
backup.
it is a good backup. But no, we're setting up this property to be 100% electrified. And we're at a really nice time actually in history, in that it's kind of going that way anyways. Like I still think peak oil is a thing, like that we are going to past the point of where we're getting less out of the ground than we were before, and with a growing population, and uh, as energy consuming as our lifestyles are, it's just not sustainable, right? And so yeah, I think it's super important, and looking at all those things too, because micro hydro is a really solid energy source that a lot of people overlook. You can generate your own hydroelectricity on a very small amount of water, as long as you're close to a flowing water source. Even if you have a groundwater source and have the ability to pump water uphill that you can store for hydroelectric energy on the way down. So a lot of people set up what are called, at least I know them as pond hydroelectrics. So they'll basically have these solar ram pumps, or even just ram pumps, but a solar ram pump can pump more water uphill quicker. You have some kind of water source down below, and you got to be on a decent elevation of land where you're getting a few 100 feet of head pressure. And when the sun is shining and you're producing excess energy, you're taking that excess energy to pump water uphill into a catchwater dam. And if you have a few 100 feet of head pressure to go down, you can release that water into another dam down below and generate electricity from it. And then when the sun is shining up again, you can pump it back up. So it's sort of a way of storing kinetic energy. And you can do that when you have an excess of solar, because that's the situation we're going to be in up at our new place, is that if we do go with 20 kilowatts of solar, that's going to, at a day like today, in the middle of, it's 10 a.m. here and it's the middle of summer, my home is producing a massive amount of energy. And when the batteries are charged, which they're probably almost charged at this point, it just dumps everything else into the grid. And so, but when you're off grid, there's nowhere else to dump that energy. So what are you going to do with it? You should do something with it. Otherwise, you're just turning off solar panels, which sucks.
Sure.
You should be doing something with that energy. So for me, that's what we're going to be trying, is pumping water around and seeing if we can later harness energy on the return.
Wow. Dude, you're neck deep. Is your wife cool with this, or is she following your lead?
She loves it. Yeah.
Okay.
She was a real city girl, like professional photographer, lived in Vancouver for 15 years. Never thought she'd have kids, but now she loves it. She loves the homesteading life. She loves being a mom. Yeah. And it's great.
It's so much more satisfying. I spent 20 years on a computer and or a microphone.
Yeah.
Going out and doing work, like you said earlier, your own energy, your own thing.
Yeah.
There's something about it, and it puts you in the present moment too.
It does. And that's what I'm really looking forward to. I've built a career to being a content creator. I've been doing podcasts and videos forever.
It's exhausting.
It is. I mean, I like the work I do, because for the most part, I'm making content about me being on the land. And so I kind of stack a function there, because I'm doing that anyways. And then I can sell content from it as well. But nothing more do I want in life than to just live on the land, raise my kids with my wife, and just do that. I would love that. And I wish more people could do that as well, because I think if more and more people start doing that, we are going to find the power of our true nature through that act. Because as you said, when you're doing that kind of work, you're very connected to the land, and you're connected to yourself, and you're connected to the God, the divinity, in my opinion. And I think that's what I think we're going two different ways in the world right now. There's like people going towards the 5G, the high tech in the cities, everything compartmentalized and computerized and completely disconnected from humanity and nature. And then the other direction is the 5D, the people going towards the higher self and the connection and the community and the understanding of nature and how that whole system is a holistic thing to you. It's all connected to you. We're all part of it. I think there's a big splitting off in society that we're really going to see over the next 10 years. And I definitely don't want to be going on the 5G path.
Yeah, I have experience with ashrams. You know, you live there and you do your seva, which means service. And it's beautiful. You work in the garden or you sweep or you work in the kitchen, and it's that simplicity, man.
Yep. Oh yeah. I got into meditation and things like that when I was a lot younger. And I really got into Zen Buddhism when I was about 16 and was regularly meditating and things like that back then. I don't regularly meditate anymore because I have found that meditation comes through just working on the land.
That's right.
And I think you experience that in those ashrams, though I've never been. But when I hear people talk about those experiences, I think that's, and even the Buddha talked about that is making the meditation part of your lifestyle and what you do. And I think that's, for me, it's all in the garden, you know, and it's the best time that I have with my kids too. Like my daughter, who's 3.5 now, that's what she wants to do with me every day. She's like, Daddy, let's do some gardening. Let's go in the garden. Oh, Daddy, I love doing stuff in the garden with you. And so not only am I getting food out of my actions there, I'm stacking all these functions. I'm producing a yield, which is coming back and nourishing our family. I'm spending quality time with my daughter. My son's getting in there now too. And I'm also having this holistic, connected experience that is totally meditative. And it's like, what else can you do in life where you get all those things at once?
That's right. I'm glad you brought up your experience with Zen. That's typically what this podcast is about.
Yeah, I know.
Inner peace.
Yeah.
If you look at the guests, you're an anomaly right now.
Yeah. Well, you did have one guy. You had, what's his name on Santos Bonacci. That's the guy.
Oh, Santos.
Yeah.
That's another animal.
Yeah. He's an interesting dude. That guy, he's deep into like the free man and sovereign movement. I've watched a number of his videos.
It's very rare to somebody come on this podcast and it's not about some sort of spiritual tradition. You know? But this all relates back. I feel that preparation is part of inner peace. I would love to get you and Bob Wells on at the same time. Are you familiar with Bob Wells?
No, I'm looking at your looking at a picture
Bob
of him
Wells
now.
is a big YouTuber. He does what you do, but for van life.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
You can't
right
miss
on.
him. Big beard.
Yeah, I can see the picture here.
He's all about being free in a van. He's lived in a van for 25 years.
Oh, geez.
No.
He must not have kids.
So, two interesting perspectives, but the same desire for freedom.
Yeah.
And to be disconnected from the society. Is a greenhouse necessary?
Yes. Yeah, for getting your seedlings, but for extending your season, and also the fact that weather isn't always how you expect it. So 100% greenhouses all the way. I've really done a lot of research into this thing called the grand solar minimum. And that's what I believe is happening, is that we're actually going into colder times. I've had a couple of guys on my my channel, The Ice Age Farmer, and David Dubine from Adapt 2030. And these guys present a lot of interesting information. And I often believe that everything is the opposite of what the establishment tells us. So I kind of, because the further I've gone into that stuff and explored the sort of esoteric nature of the things that they do, they often do that. They often invert things. And so I'm not sitting here saying I'm 100% that grand solar minimum is a thing. If it's happening, I think the information's compelling, but I wouldn't put it past them that it's the opposite of what the global warming people say. But needless to say, whether you believe in the climate change narrative that the mainstream media has spoon-fed to us for the last 20 years, or you buy into the grand solar minimum or somewhere in between, the fact of the matter is the weather patterns do change on this planet. And we never really have long extended periods of time where it's the same. And so because agriculture is this human phenomenon that requires the manipulation of nature in some degrees, in small areas, to produce an outcome that's predictable, greenhouses just make that so much easier. Especially in cold climates like we're in, you can have, call it 8 solid months of eating from your garden, and then 4 months of downtime, but you're still eating from your garden, just a little bit less, and then you got a lot of storage crops, opposed to only like 4 or 5 without a greenhouse. So a nursery is really important, a small nursery where you can start stuff, but you can often stack that into your home, which I would recommend if you're just getting started and you're looking where you want to start your tomatoes and all that. It's easier just to set up some lights or an area by some open windows, as long as they're facing south or get a good amount of light to start things. And then another greenhouse, a high tunnel, which is where you would put, you could seed things earlier in the season. So in our climates, they're fairly similar, with a good high tunnel, an unheated greenhouse, basically, that's sealed. You can get in there and be planting things like carrots in March, whereas outside you wouldn't be able to do that until late April, early May. You can seed spinach in late February. You can get production from the land for such a longer period of time at the beginning and the end of the season. At the end of the season, you can just have crops that you started in late summer or early fall, and then you can have a full greenhouse full of things like kale and broccolis and cabbage and carrots and even potatoes that you can be harvesting in the ground all winter long. So that really, really extends your quality of life too, because then you're eating fresh stuff from the ground.
I want to go back to fruit here. How you said you have a lemon tree? How tall is it?
Well, I've got my Kefir lime tree here is about 10 feet tall. One of my Meyer lemons that I'm looking at over here is about the same. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 other variations of funky lemons, and they're all around 5 to 6 feet tall.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's not that tall.
No, you can keep them small. You know what, though? I wouldn't actually do it again. There's certain things, like I've got passion fruit in here right now that's just gone insane. And that is doing really well in this greenhouse. The lemons, they don't do that great. They do okay.
Maybe what about the grapes?
Oh, grapes are amazing.
Yeah.
Grapes are insane. I've also got grapes in my greenhouse. What I've tried to do in this greenhouse is, I don't know if this will be on the podcast, but just to give you a little look at where things are.
The jungle.
That's my son crawling around. Yeah, it's a jungle, and that's kind of what I want. In the summertime, I want there to be so much foliage in here that inside it's kind of like in the forest floor, it's kind of cooler.
Yeah.
So that in the summer, the foliage, particularly the figs, the cucumbers, and the grapes, their foliage, I train them up so that they crowd out the plastic surface where the sun comes in, and then in the wintertime they come down, and then I get lots of light in the winter. Wow. So it keeps it cooler in the summer, and then it remains nice and warm in the winter. But the lemons, I don't know if I'd do it again. It's I'm going to build one of these at my new place attached to the house. And I don't know if I do the lemons. The figs are a huge success, though. They're like amazing.
How big is a fig tree? How tall is a fig?
Oh, they're pretty big. I mean, this is one, that's a fig right there, and it goes up to the roof. So it's fairly big, probably 6 foot radius, 6 foot diameter, and probably, up to 10 feet tall.
How big is it when you buy it, when you get it? Or you're not going from seed, right?
No, I'm not going from seed. I bought these as potted plants, and they were just like, a few feet tall in a pot at that time. And I don't even know what variety it is, but the sweet thing about this variety is that they fruit off the first year, off the current year's growth. So I can literally, at the end of the season here, cut these down to the ground and then that way there's lots of light that comes through, and then they'll grow back up and pop new fruits, just like a tomato plant. It's quite amazing.
Unbelievable. How long did
Yeah.
it take the fig tree to get to 10 feet or so?
Oh, I mean, what has it been? I mean, it was probably 4 feet tall in April. So,
Wow.
From April till now.
Wow. And that's because of this is working because of the greenhouse.
Yeah. Like if I did these outside, which there are people in the area that do them outside, there's a lot of Mediterranean gardeners here that do them outside, and then they cut them right down to the ground in the fall, and then they cover the whole crown of a plant up with straw, and then that keeps the crown alive, and then they uncover it, and then it comes back up in the spring. So those figs outside will be a lot smaller, like probably half the size.
Is it better for the grapes to be in the greenhouse instead of outside?
Oh, no. I've got tons of grapes outside. Okay. But the point of the grapes in here are to get an earlier crop and a later crop, and also to give me some sun coverage or some shade in here in the summertime.
Do the birds come after the grapes?
No, not really.
No?
I don't really have that problem. I mean, if you do, you just put nets on them, and then that will keep them off. That's what a lot of organic growers do, is they put long white nettings over their berry crops.
That's the interesting part about gardening / farming. You're always up against Mother Nature somehow, some way.
Oh yeah.
The weather. Oh my gosh.
Time. Weather's the biggest thing.
If a hurricane or tropical storm comes through.
Yep.
This happened to me 2 weeks ago. I'm out there like a rookie.
Up in that area? Really?
My corn. Yeah. Oh yeah. We got nailed.
Oh, wow.
I lost power for a day and a half.
No way.
The other thing with weather is, there's geoengineering, there's HARP. Some people don't know what we're saying right now, but you just don't know what's going to happen with the weather.
I know. And that's another reason to have greenhouses, because you don't know.
Touché.
Yeah. And if the stuff they're spraying with the geoengineering is harmful to us, the sort of the aluminum, the barium, and all that stuff, another reason to have greenhouses is to keep what's falling off the sky off your crop. I don't know the absolute truth with any of that stuff. I'm certainly aware of it. I mean, as a guy who's spent the majority of my life outside over the last 10 years, I can tell you that I witnessed that geoengineering all the time. I've looked at the flight path. These planes are not, they're not commercial airliners. They're grid in the area. And they actually stopped doing it here. At least they significantly stopped doing it, where I don't even notice it anymore in the last few years. But I remember in my first couple of years of farming, this would have been in 2009 and 2010, I noticed it a lot. They were doing this constantly. They grid the entire valley with these planes, and you'd see them turn around and come back. So I don't know what the hell they're doing, but I don't know what to do about it. My friend John says, I'm not in a hurry to worry about things that I can't change.
Could you create a microgreen farm right in a greenhouse?
That's what this greenhouse was. I built this greenhouse for a fairly large scale microgreens production. And we were producing about 400 flats a week in here at the height of its production. And so, you don't even need artificial light. A little bit of supplemental light at the darkest month of the year, which is basically, December 1st to January 7th. That's kind of like the darkest period of the year. We would, I had some shelves in here that had supplemental lights that I would run 24/7, and I would take batches of crops and put them under those lights for 3 or 4 days to finish them quicker. And then, but the most of their time would just be growing in the natural light. But it's so dark here in the winter that I would just finish them with a bit of artificial light. But most microgreen growers are actually just growing it entirely in artificial light. Yeah.
It's low maintenance, right?
It's fairly low maintenance. Yeah. I mean, it's not like, it has maintenance in other ways. It's doing that kind of farming is very repetitive and kind of mechanical, because you're doing a lot of the same things over and over again. It's like planting, watering, harvesting, packing, doing these same things over and over again. Whereas outdoor farming is so much more dynamic. because there's variables of weather and the land and all that. But yeah, I mean, you certainly can. I mean, I've got hundreds of, if not thousands of students around the world that have taken what I've taught people about with microgreens on my online courses and stuff and doing it, right? And you can make a good living doing it.
Just one crop, basically.
Well, you can have a few, but it's one type of crop, a microgreen. You know, you might have up to 10 different crops that you do, but yeah, they're all more or less the same as far as how they're grown. A microgreen is the first foliage that grows after that. So the sprout goes down into the ground, forms a root. The microgreen is the thing that comes out after that, which is called the cotyledon, the first two leaves that come out of the seed. That's what a microgreen is. And microgreens are just as healthy as far as I know. I'm not an expert on the nutritional value of all this stuff, but microgreens are, they say they're 10 to 15 times more nutritionally dense than the vegetable itself. Yep.
Speaking of that, I never saw a chicken coop of any kind in your stuff. Are you animal free?
No. We get our eggs from my brother-in-law, my wife's brother. He raises a lot of small game. At our new farm, we'll probably do it. It's been a space thing for us here. We could probably integrate a chicken coop into here fairly easy if we wanted to. But up until this year, I do a lot of traveling for work. I'd go on the road for a week or 2 weeks at a time and make videos for my membership site and my YouTube channel.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah. And so it's been hard to have animals with our lifestyle, but now that we've kind of accepted that we'd actually just rather be here and not travel as much anyways, that we'll probably start doing more of that.
Yeah. Cause when I saw you do the video with Doug and Stacy, I'm like, this dude's from Canada. What's he doing in Missouri?
Yeah. No, I used to teach workshops all over the US. And when I'd go to do those workshops, I'd go and make videos too. And I also did just multiple road trips where I just make videos. Like we did a big one. We did a couple actually last year, but we did a big one in the middle of the US. We drove for 2 weeks and just basically made videos every single day. Ended up in, we went from here basically as far as Madison, Wisconsin. And then I came back through the north of the US, through Wyoming and all that. And yeah. But that's becoming a lot more difficult to do now. And I actually don't really care. I'm kind of tired of traveling. I've just been doing it. You know, I started doing public talks into my second or third year of farming, and I would just be on the road all winter. Like I'd just be flying places and all that.
Yeah. I think the pandemic was a sort of a message to slow down, get prepared, but slow down.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think it's really complicated, the whole thing. It's so politicized.
Yeah.
And there's like so many forces pulling this way or that way. But yeah, it is a slowdown thing. And I'm actually doing a podcast today with a guy named Rob Avis, and he thinks part of what it was designed to do was to prepare society for peak oil. And basically slow down the economy so that we don't go over the edge too quickly. So I'll find out more about that today, and I'll circle back.
When do you think the financial bubble is going to pop, if it does?
I think it has popped in some ways, because I don't really ever think that things are monolithic. Like there's one thing that makes it all go. Certainly the financial system is very centralized. I think elements of it have popped already, and you know, a lot of economists were saying that this is going to happen before this whole pandemic thing happened anyways. I don't know when the financial bubble is going to pop, but I expect by this November we're going to see a major event that's going to really shake us. I think the U.S. election.
After the election. It has to be after. Can't be before. It's
going to be after, yeah. And
I saw the pandemic coming. I was warning people in February, and
so did I.
People thought I was crazy.
Yep.
There's something there. You know, the Kobe Bryant tragedy happened. He's buried in Corona, California.
Yep. There's so many crazy things like that. I saw it coming then too. I saw this all coming on January 29th. I was on my way down to Phoenix, Arizona. I was catching a flight. I was transit in Seattle, and I got held up with the TSA for 9 hours. I missed my flight to Phoenix, and Seattle airport was a gong show. There's always a lot of Asians at Seattle airport, and a lot of Asians typically do wear masks in the flu season. And so that's not abnormal. But what was abnormal is the amount of people at that airport that were wearing masks, and the vibe was scary. And so I got turned around. They didn't let me into the US. I had to go home. And I'm glad I did, because the minute I got home, I said to my wife, I was like, we need to start preparing. And at that time, we didn't really know what was going on. Like, we were still kind of cautious about the illness. And at this point, I have zero concern about getting that cold.
Right.
But at that time we were. So we're taking precautions, but we started preparing like crazy, getting like stored food and making sure that we're prepared for a lockdown. And I saw this stuff coming way back then. And I was telling people too, like, start getting prepared now.
Yeah.
Because they're going to bring this hammer down again in the fall. And things could be a lot worse then. And it's really going to shake up a lot of small businesses too, unfortunately. So I hope people are preparing for another lockdown this fall. But who knows? Maybe the political tides could change so much. I don't have faith in the political system. However, what's going on with Trump is somewhat anomalous, it seems.
Yeah.
And the political tide might turn so much that maybe this whole thing gets shut down. To me, this is all the New World Order pushing their last ditch effort to bring the sort of tyrannical technocracy that they've wanted for hundreds of years. That's what it looks like to me. I could be wrong. It is what it is. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. It's interesting times. I mean, regardless, it doesn't matter what I think of what that political machine is going to do. My preparations and my work now is the same regardless of what happens there.
That's right. That's right.
Get prepared, get connected, get connected to your community, your family, start taking control of things in your own life. That's probably one of the biggest messages that I've pulled out from this whole pandemic thing is like, we need to start being more responsible for everything we use in our lives to exist. Food, energy, water, community, money. How do we transact? How do we trade? Without this sort of monolithic centralized system, how do we get along in the world?
Yeah.
And we need to start owning up and taking responsibility and be the ones we've been waiting for, right? Be our own second coming of Christ. Be that for ourselves. And I think if we use this opportunity to kind of kick us in the butt and wake us up, I think a lot of good things could come out of this whole event. With
all this preparation that you're doing, all this work you've been doing, are you at least having fun doing it?
Oh yeah. I wouldn't be doing it otherwise. Yeah. And that's a really good question because
it's all a game anyway.
If you aren't having fun doing this, you're not going to last long. And so you've got to enjoy the lifestyle and you have to, you got to have fun doing it. I mean, that's the thing for us. It's just fun. We'd be doing this stuff anyways. Like I would be preparing for the same things at the same expediency regardless of the pandemic. Well, maybe this whole thing kicked me in the butt a little bit more, but I've been preparing for this for 10 years. But I've wanted to get my family outside of the city for a long time. My wife and I have been talking about this for years. Yeah, there's just everything in that lifestyle is desirable and fun for us. And it's a whole package of amazingness where you can stack, like I said at the beginning, of all these things of education of your kids, connection with your kids, connection with the divine through meditation in the work of having your hands in the dirt and doing these things that provide for you and you alone or your family, right? And owning your own work and owning everything about yourself. It's a true sovereign existence.
And you dabbled with Zen, so you have an understanding of this is all kind of an illusion game type of fantasy that we're in.
100%.
So we might as well have fun preparing for.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the way I like to put it is when I signed up for this existence, I signed up for the whole human experience. I signed up for everything. And so that to me, that was a big thing I realized before we decided to have kids, because my wife and I intentionally had our children. But when we decided to have kids, that was the biggest thought in my mind is, you know what? I signed up for the full human experience. When I came into this body from the divine, I want it all. I want the experience of having children and all these beautiful things that life bring us. I want to do it all. Having kids is probably one of the biggest things you can do in your life. And so it's all part of that.
Well said. That's a great way to end right there. We can hear kids in the background. It all makes sense. It all comes together.
Totally.
Curtis, I really appreciate your time, man.
Hey, my pleasure, brother.
What a conversation, huh? It's definitely something to open your mind as to what's happening right now. And of course, this podcast is usually mostly about your inner life. But we have to look at our outer life too. And things are changing right now. What do you do about those changes? The material world, the physical world needs your attention. You need to prepare, even if it's small steps. Not everyone is going to go all the way like Curtis is doing. Someone might be kind of right in the middle, like how I am. Or you might just take small little steps just to free yourself from the society and to be a little more self-reliant. Do make sure you find my meditation album on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube. And be sure to share this podcast and let people know that it exists. If you're looking for me, you can go to drreese.com. That's doctor spelled out. And I'll talk to you on the next episode.
Thanks for listening to Inner Peace with Dr. Reese. If this episode opened your heart, feel free to share on social media and tell your loved ones. Also, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, may peace be with you.